from you. As we prepare to celebrate our nation's Independence Day, recent historic Supreme Court decisions remind us of our role as a nation of equality and justice. Over the last few decades, we've lost sight of justice. It is time we include our seriously ill and disabled citizens, as well as the many Americans imprisoned for nonviolent drug offenses, in our efforts to restore what this country stands for. As I said at the last press conference, I would provide additional information related to the Santa Ana case. And so I will, for a moment, go through some of those new items that have occurred. First of all, the Orange County District Attorney's Office has launched an investigation into the conduct that occurred on May 26th. Secondly, and Anthony Curiale, another attorney, will speak to the issue of state claims being filed for damages and for return of property in that case. Additionally, we have uncovered footage from the May 26 raid showing definitively from comments made by the officers and uncovered actually by the OC Weekly that they were in fact using marijuana edibles while during the raid. So part of the evidence that I'm talking about has been discussed in this week's Orange County Weekly edition, which has this nice photo on the front of it showing a picture of the raid, kind of a character of that. In addition to that, there's not just issues in Santa Ana. There's issues in other Southern California cities as well that have engaged in similar conduct. I'm filing a civil rights action against the city of Anaheim for damages related to its continuing retaliation against landlord Tony Jalali, who operated a building and leased to a medical marijuana collective that was in full compliance with state law. And for that, he has endured the attempt by the city to take his building, as well as an attempt just recently to put him in jail, which failed for the city. Likewise concerning is the conduct in the city of Desert Hot Springs and a former Desert Hot Springs planning commissioner who resigned as a result of that behavior. We'll be discussing that today. And so I'm going to have Steve Downing speak, and then we have several people that will give short 2-minute statements followed by questions and answers.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Downing. I'm a retired Deputy Chief of Police for the Los Angeles Police Department. During my time there, I commanded the narcotic enforcement program. And during that time, I learned that our war on drugs is a complete failure. Today, I am on the National Executive Board of the organization known as Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, LEAP, an organization of criminal justice professionals and supporters numbering 150,000. And we try to educate the public through our programs as to the fact that the harms of the war on drugs are greater than the harms of the drugs themselves, and that we need to end prohibition. Is a perfect microcosm as to what has happened across this country in terms of the corrupting influence of this drug war, the corrupting influences of the money that is made available to local law enforcement across this country, and the corrupting influences of the other institutions that want to keep this drug war alive. In California, if you look at the penal code, nowhere will you find the word warrior, nowhere will you even find the word police officer. You will only find the word peace officer, and we have forgotten that. We have forgotten the Pelian principles. This raid has tainted my profession. This raid shows what has happened to the culture of law enforcement across this country. It begins with favoritism. The officers got their search warrant. Their station has a courthouse next door. They could have gone there and made their plea for probable cause to get a search warrant. They didn't. They traveled to another city, to Fullerton, to get a favorite judge who used to be a narcotic prosecutor, one who they hang out with and violate the law by buying red cups and drinking. But even there, the judge didn't provide a search warrant that allowed them no knock. But they violated that. They crashed the door down with a battering ram. They entered this location to enforce a city ordinance, a misdemeanor city ordinance, an inspection, like you would inspect a barber shop or a beauty shop or a restaurant. But they entered with battering rams. They entered with their guns very dangerously pointed at people like Carla. And then once they took the people out, the only persons that they let go was Carla, after holding her for a while. Everybody else they took down and booked and put in jail and held them in communicata. I believe that Marla, I'm sorry, Marla. I believe that Marla was just too much trouble for them to take to a special jail and handle in an appropriate way. Then when everyone was out, one of the officers makes a statement, okay, let's take this place apart. Let's damage this place. Let's damage these cameras and make the boss happy. I have to ask the question, who's the boss? I don't think it would be the chief of police. So who's the boss? I hope you can find that out one day. And then the resources involved in this place, all of those police officers and all the firemen that they brought in to spend hours and hours, those are public safety resources that are being squandered. That is what this drug war is doing to us. And then the officers themselves, one saying that she wished she could have kicked a woman in a wheelchair in the nub. Well, I think she might have done it had she still been there after they destroyed all the cameras that they thought they were going to destroy. That's the danger of those kinds of attitudes. That's the danger of that kind of culture. And then they stuff their faces with medical marijuana. Number one, illegal for them, against their department policy, against their profession. And number two, somebody else's property. So this is what's happened. This is what's happened to the culture of law enforcement because of this war on drugs. Because in this state, medical marijuana has been legal for over 20 years. And nobody has gone to bat to make it work for the patients that need it. Finally, in Sacramento, maybe something is happening. But look what's happened to law enforcement. You don't have peace officers in your communities anymore. You have warriors, drug warriors. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. My name is Cheryl Shuman. It's spelled CHERYLSHUMAN. I would like to first of all thank all of the media members here that came today. I just found out about this late last night, got the call from Rolland and then from Sergio and then from Ned and like 5 other people all within like 30 seconds of each other. And you know, I'm the founder of Beverly Hills Cannabis Club. I'm the executive director of Moms for Marijuana. We have over 1 million followers, but most importantly, I have a personal relationship with Marla James, and we've been on the front lines for 8 years now. And what really blows my mind about this whole thing is while people are in Denver celebrating millions of dollars of revenue and taxes, and while people are making millions of dollars off this plant, there are still people going to jail for this. It's insane. When I hear about a warrior like Marla or like Shona, these are women that are very well known, extremely well respected activists in our community, in our world. And they have stood up and risked everything, losing their homes, their children, their jobs, their families, everything that they've ever worked for, just for this plant. And they're doing it not just for this plant, but for all of the people that it can help all around the world. And the most important thing that I hope that you get out of this conference today is the fact that the drug war is not over. And as long as people are still going to jail for this plant, as Joe Grumbine has said a million times with the Human Solution, this man has been on the front lines as well. And when someone is arrested, he is there for court support, because a lot of times when you get busted, the world stops caring. And we have to start caring. We have to bond together. We have to tell these stories. Also here today is Rolland Gregg from Washington. I know he's here somewhere. I don't have my reading glasses on. But here's also a man who was growing cannabis for his father who had cancer, who is facing a severe penalty, going to prison. Why is this? And then when I see people like Tony, who has been kind enough and generous enough to allow dispensaries to lease from him. One of the things that you'll find about this industry is almost every single person in this industry has gotten into it because of a personal issue that they've had either with their health or with someone that they loved, that this plant has helped. And you know what? This plant is such a miracle plant. It can heal a multitude of illnesses. It can heal our economy. It can save lives. But we can't keep putting people in jail for it. So I am thrilled that we have such amazing activists like Shona here to speak about this. You have to hear her story. We have to get her child back, because it is wrong to rip a child out of a good mother's hands. And we have to protect. One of the big cases, guys, just so you know, in our systems, there's a kids for cash problem. There's a big kids for cash problem. And what I mean by that, social services actually get a bonus for ripping those kids out of patients' hands because they're easier to place. We have to stop that, because I can guarantee you those children are in far more danger in some of these foster facilities. Look at little Alex Hill, who after she was ripped out of her parents' arms, she was killed by her foster parent just a short time later. This has to stop, and I'm proud to stand here and support Shona and what you're doing to bring attention to this. With Moms for Marijuana, we're fighting for women constantly, so please, I urge you, and even though this is a local thing with Santa Ana, I urge you to include Shona's story and Rolland's stories from these other states, and also Joe Grumbine, who has been there at the front line, standing up for patients and standing up for people who've been wrongly accused, and also for people who are being put in prison for a non-violent criminal act. Let's save that money. Let's take that money out of the prisoners, the prison's hands, and let's put it into schools and after-school care programs that we
The next year from Joe Grumbine and Rolland Gregg, President of the Human Solution International.
I want to thank everybody for being here. It is extremely important that these stories are getting this sort of attention. 6 years ago, I was raided in a very similar way. And my wife had a gun stuck to her head, and the officer that was raiding my house told her that we should all be put down like animals when nobody was watching and no camera was rolling. 6 years ago, Marla James testified in my trial. And here we are. Rolland James is one of the founding members of the Human Solution. You're going to hear from many people that have many cases, and there's a few things that tie these cases all together. The first one is obviously cannabis is involved. The second is that these are civil rights cases. Every single one of these, whether a child's been taken, whether a home or a business has been raided, we're talking about major civil rights violations over the possession, transportation, and distribution of a plant that heals people. And the third thing that we're dealing with is the courage of a few individuals willing to stand up. 97% of all cases are settled in plea deals. They never go to court, they never go to trial. And I can assure you today, I would be serving a prison term if it wasn't for the courage of the people that were willing to stand up. And when we hear from Shona, when we hear from Rolland, and we hear from some of these other people that are involved, the one thing that makes the difference is when the people know about these cases, number one, and when they're willing to stand up and say enough. All of these lawsuits And these actions that we're taking are huge steps. But the one thing that's got to happen before this is over is the federal law and the federal position needs to change. And it's not going to change until the public sentiment changes. And that's what Nick is necessary to do. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Joe.
Good, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have been experiencing the wrath of the federal government since 2012 when, my family is called the Kettle Falls 5. We've gotten a lot of publicity because it was such an outrageous selective prosecution by the United States Attorney Michael Ormsby in the Eastern District of Washington, who is violating Section 538 of the 2015 Appropriations Act. This is something that Dana Rohrabacher and Sam Farr, some California representatives, actually passed. And so when our case went forward in 2015, they actually violated a congressional law. And we're hoping right now that the Ninth Circuit will look at that. It's a very big deal. And so, we're still facing 20 years in prison, October 2nd, for following our Washington State law and our doctor's orders. So it's very frightening. My wife also had a gun to her head as well. The SWAT team raided at 6 a.m. Same thing with my mom. And we had to spend weeks in prison, in federal prison, for following our doctor's orders. My stepfather, they dropped the charges against a week before trial because he had stage 3 pancreatic cancer. And luckily he's now been taking cannabis oil. He's doing much better off the chemotherapy. So in our trial, we were charged with 5 major federal drug charges, and we were acquitted of all 5 original charges because of the support of the community like you guys out there. So it really makes a difference when people like the Human Solution and Americans for Safe Access and other people actually come together. Our courtroom was packed, and the jury saw that. In fact, the judge even had to remove the jury a few times because there were so many people with Human Solution ribbons there supporting us, and the jury saw the kangaroo court happen. And if you go out and support your neighbors and show up at these things, we'll stop convicting our neighbors of these silly crimes. We won't support. You just got to show up and help your neighbor, because then the police department will not be supportive. They will be shamed like they should be. They should be ashamed of doing things like this to people who are medical patients, taking their medicine away and throwing it around and breaking down doors. So I just want to thank everybody out there who supported the Kettle Falls 5 so far. If you go to kettlefalls5.com and check out what's happened, you'll see it's right in alignment with this atrocities as well, Shona and others. So we appreciate your support and continue. We're facing sentencing on August 2nd, 20 years, me and my wife and my mom. Still, to this day. We're hoping something happens before then. We're just going to continue to support our other people as well. We're going to do the same thing. So thank you guys all for coming. This is really
Let's do it. Let's do it.
We'll next hear from Sarah Swain, who is the attorney for Shona Banda, who's had her 11-year-old son taken from her by the Kansas authorities.
Thanks for being here today. I think we can all agree on one thing at this moment, and that is that 2015 is the year for the insanity that is known as the war on drugs to end. And we are all standing before you today because we have picked up our swords and we are not going to stop fighting until we have literally It is the time today, tomorrow, next month. It is time for the insanity to end. And let's call the war on drugs what it really is. It is a war on poor people. It is a war on minorities. And really, it's a war on the disenfranchised in this country. That's what it really is. And so the drug warriors, as Mr. Downing spoke of earlier, they're really just people that are picking on the little guys. And we're all here today to say that the time for that to end is now. I'm here representing Shona Banda, a sick mother, a mother who for years battled a disease that many times could have taken her life, that went the traditional route, went to doctors, was prescribed medications, took those medications, had surgeries, spent time in hospitals, and her quality of life was practically zero. She was parenting her 2 small children from a couch because traditional medicine, not only did it not cure her, it didn't even allow her to function on a daily basis in a way where she could get off the couch and play with her children and take them on trips and go to the park. And these aren't big things that we're talking about. These are the little things in life that Shona was completely unable to participate in with her own children. And it was only when she discovered cannabis oil and began using it that her disease was put into complete remission within days. Within days of beginning the use of cannabis oil, Shona's life changed immediately. She was able to regain her strength. She was able to walk without the assistance of a wheelchair. She was able to play with her children, have what we all deserve to have, which is a normal family life where we get to love and be loved by our families. And what the federal government in this country has done, is that it has put every single parent, whether you're a sick parent or the parent of a sick child, our government in 2015 makes those people make a choice. Am I going to take my medicine that can keep me alive so I can be here to raise my children? Or am I going to follow the law? Or in an even more horrific circumstance, am I going to give my child this medicine that could save my child's life? Or am I going to follow the law? It's a choice that no parent should ever have to make. And yet in the state where I live, where Shona lives, that was the choice that she was forced to make. And as a result of her choosing to take the safest, most natural medicine that our world has ever known, her son was ripped away from her and placed in state custody. Her house was raided. She has now been charged with felony crimes that can send her to prison for more than 30 years, which is, let's be honest, a death sentence. 30 years in prison is essentially a death sentence for a healthy person. It certainly is a death sentence for someone that needs their medication to survive. Hopefully, we will change that, and we will change it sooner rather than later. It is time for our country to step up to the plate, to do the right thing, to change these laws. Marijuana is not a Schedule I drug. Our government currently views it as a Schedule I drug, with one of the requirements for a substance to be a Schedule I drug that it have no medicinal benefits. This is medicine that cures cancer. This is medicine that keeps people from having seizures. This is medicine that saves people's lives that suffer from Crohn's disease, as Shona Banda does. This is medicine that turns back the clock on ailments, horrible, horrible ailments like Alzheimer's disease. It is time for the federal government to reschedule marijuana. It is not a Schedule I drug. And with the stroke of a pen, that can be accomplished by our president, by our attorney general, and the time to do that is now. We are going to pursue absolutely every remedy that exists in order to get justice for Shona Banda, for the Kettle Falls 5, for every person, for the Marla James of the world. No one deserves to be treated like a criminal for medicating themselves. And if it takes us suing the federal government, if it takes us suing the state of Kansas, we are going to do everything we can to end the war on drugs once and for all and to make this medicine available to everyone who needs it. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from attorney Anthony Curiale, who has filed the state claim against Santa Ana.
We haven't quite filed a claim yet. We plan on doing that within 2 weeks. I think one inescapable conclusion that has come from the raid in Santa Ana is that the conduct of the police officers was despicable. And I think that's an appropriate word. The conduct stems from a culture of arrogance. It's cultivated by a perceived immunity, and it's encouraged by administrative, bureaucratic, and judicial disinterest and apathy. Our police departments have gone from a mission of to protect and serve to search and destroy. Armies are created for one purpose and one purpose alone, and that is to destroy the enemy. We have turned our police departments into microcosms of armies. It's resulted, all of this, in the institution of the prison industrial complex, where we incarcerate multitudes, hundreds and thousands of persons for minor drug crimes. This will not end. It will not end until the average American rises up and says, enough is enough. It's a very small step from a secured state to a security state. And that is where we are headed with this war on drugs. We are going to file a claim against the city of Santa Ana for multiple tort actions, which include deprivation of civil rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress, false imprisonment, and other things. We are going to be asking for substantial damages, not to enrich the individuals that were harmed by the raid, terrorized by the raid, where property was destroyed unnecessarily. It will be to punish the city, the police department, and the individuals in the place where they hurt the most, and that is the pocketbook. And the only way to send a message is for them to pay substantial damages, not de minimis damages, to those that were harmed by the raid. Thank you.
We'll next hear from former planning commissioner of the city of Desert Hot Springs, Dean Gray, who will discuss the filing of a lawsuit against that city where the mayor is currently working for a collective.
My name is Dean Gray. On January 14th of this year, I resigned as planning commissioner for the city of Desert Hot Springs because of city hall corruption and abuse of the democratic process. My civil rights were violated when corrupt city officials prevented me from doing my job. My attorney is Matthew Pappas, who is familiar with city hall corruption and knows how some dirty medical marijuana dispensaries cheat to win approval. Desert Hot Springs is a small, crime-infested town. Crime starts at the top, with the mayor, and rots City Hall, including City Manager Martine Magana, Community Development Director Alex Meyerhoff, City Attorney Steve Quintanilla, plus City Council members Joe McKee and Russell Betts. Official approval for medical marijuana dispensaries in the city of Desert Hot Springs was not undertaken for support of local medical patients. Instead, a few people cheated for profit. That is unfair, illegal, and not American. Medical marijuana dispensary applicants paid a high price to apply for just 3 positions based on a point system concocted by City Attorney Steve Quintanilla, who is still keeping details of his point system secret 6 months after the fact. It was our job to hold a public hearing to discuss issues and ask questions. That did not happen. Instead, planning commissioners were shut up by corrupt city officials who had their fingers in the medical marijuana pie. At that time, no one knew how high up the corruption went. We did not know then that Mayor Adam Sanchez was secretly collecting money from the first medical marijuana dispensary to open in the city. We know that now because Mayor Sanchez admitted it. That medical marijuana dispensary was also favored by Councilman Russell Betts, whose friend also worked for the business and was well paid. Dirty money has a way to sneak around high places. Construction of their dispensary business began 4 months prior to the public hearing because they all knew in advance that they would win the point system approval administered by City Attorney Steve Quintanilla. A lot of construction work progressed without building permits and in spite of red tape stop work orders from city code enforcement officials. As planning commissioners, we were prevented from discussing that illegal construction. The point system concocted by City Attorney Quintanilla specifically would have eliminated that business from winning the top position because of their illegal construction work. City Hall construction opened, City Hall corruption opened the first medical marijuana business in the city. Councilmember Joe McKee was also corrupted when his campaign manager, Richard Oberhaus, won the top position. At that time, it was also a secret that Richard Oberhaus was involved in the marijuana business. Because Commissioner Parker tried to ask questions, Councilman McKee fired the commissioner from the Planning Commission. Prior to the meeting, Oberhaus phoned me to try influencing me and was told to take a hike. One other dispensary business also raises questions. The Brown Dog Dispensary was approved by City Attorney Quintanilla, despite the fact the location of the business was just 300 feet away from a church school where hundreds of kids attend classes every day. California state law requires medical marijuana dispensaries to be located more than 600 feet away from K through 12 schools. Planning commissioners were prevented from asking questions about this business. When planning commissioners can't ask questions at public hearings, the democratic process is cheating. My civil rights were violated when corrupt city officials prevented me from doing my job in the city of Desert Hot Springs. Legitimate medical marijuana dispensaries intending to serve patients were cheated by City Hall corruption. It's no secret that I'm a medical marijuana patient, and my attorney is Matt Pappas.
All right, that concludes the speakers. Now we'll take questions from the press and just direct who you'd like questions asked of, if there are any questions. Are there any questions?
Mr. Pappas, you did
Yes.
sort of get us here today saying you had new evidence against those guys who raided the Santa Ana dispensary. What is that?
We have some additional video
What is
that's
that?
been received from other collectives, and I'm going to release it. I'm in the process of doing that now. So there are raids at additional collectives where we see officers eating edibles and engaging in the same types of activities that we saw on the 26th, and some new types of games that they're spinning a lottery type of wheel and playing that in the collective. So that is some of the new evidence. Additionally, the issue of the district attorney coming and looking at things has come up, as well as when you review the article published in the weekly, you'll see additional information concerning the department. Yes, and the department said they're not going to. Then they're asking about the flavors as well. So, any other questions?
Well, the police are also complaining that you've not given them the tapes in their entirety.
Well, I'm giving you today the camera 1 and camera 2 complete raw footage. And I have an email in the package of materials back there from Sonia Carvalho, the city attorney, dated I think June 8th, acknowledging that she's received the raw videos. So I'm not sure what the police are talking about. Because that email's back there, it's from her to me acknowledging receipt of 3 of the raw videos.
So, Mr. Pappas, in terms of the quantity of the video, did you give the entire 9 hours or whatever it was worth of video, every single
I-
part of the video?
I did. I gave them I gave them the original DVR data with the
16
software
hours.
you use to review it. That's available for you here today as well on DVDs.
You know, when you say that the police department isn't testing the officers that took part in the raid, I mean, do you know that for sure that those officers have not been tested?
Well, they've said it to you, to the news. And so I will have to believe what the police spokesman is saying, what the chief has said. And you would think they'd test them given the serious nature of this issue.
They told us unless the supervisor sees them eating, they won't test.
So,
I mean, Chief Downey, you can speak to this.
Yes,
You know, when you have an operation that takes place over 9-10 hours, chances are the officers are going to bring their own food there, right? I mean, what's the odds of them having their own protein bar?
Well, I would,
You
I
would, you
would,
need to look at the tape.
I would
You
think
need to
that
look at
the,
what they're eating and how they're eating it and what they're talking about. You will understand, you'll come to the same conclusions as we did, as they're joking around and playing and eating a chocolate. They're all eating chocolate.
I'm just trying to get to the truth. That's all.
from
Yeah.
from the standpoint of a police administrator, what I've seen on the news and what I've read in the reports, the immediate position of the Santa Ana Police Department and their spokesman was to be defensive. In spite of the film that they had, they still had to say, oh, we haven't seen it all. But they saw a lot of film that amounted to misconduct. But they took a defensive posture. Rather than saying, we are concerned about professional behavior among our professionally trained, hired, screened police officers. We don't want thugs. We don't want our people to behave as thugs, as this video shows. So we are promising this community that we're going to make an investigation. And when that investigation is over, we are going to reveal the results of that investigation. We're going to provide transparency to what is alleged here, because what is alleged here is a horrible, horrible indictment of our police department. So when we get down to nitpicking whether the chocolate they had was something they brought along, I have never participated in a raid where I brought my lunch. I don't brown bag when I go on a raid. You just don't do it. You go on a raid with in the intention of gathering evidence, doing a professional job. If you're going to take a lunch break, you're going to go someplace else. You're not going to contaminate your crime scene with your personal brown bag. So in my mind, there's very little doubt that what they were eating belonged to the dispensary, and that they took it. And in my mind, if I was the chief of police, I would want to investigate that. Now, most police departments, I think all police departments, have random drug testing. So why would they say, we're not going to test these officers in light of these major allegations of misconduct? So I hope that answers your question, yeah.
And there are plenty of places to eat all around the collective.
Mr. Pappas, can you
Yes.
kind of tell us about the video that you're going to give us today? I mean,
We have some,
how-
well,
how
the
is it
video
mixed up?
that you have today is the raw video from the May 26th raid. We're going to release in the next day or so, only because of technical issues with me doing it, footage from additional raids that we've obtained. So those additional raids, if that's what you're asking about, show similar conduct. In one of them, police officers are spinning a wheel instead of playing darts, for instance. They're eating things again, and it seems to be the same officers, or mostly the same officers, involved in, for instance, that raid. Yes?
Matt, is there drug testing in police departments on a regular basis, or do they check for steroids use? Or is it done after shootings, or do they not drug test them at all?
I'm not able to answer that question, but perhaps Nick Morrow. Nick, could you come up here, please? Nick is a former Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy. He's an expert on the LA County Superior Court. Can you address that issue, please?
Every law enforcement agency has random urine testing, testing for cause, testing for suspicion. So whenever a significant complaint comes in, there's a process by which supervisors can initiate that whole process. So it occurs in most any agency. In this case, it would seem to be reasonable to have them submit to a urine test or a blood test. Failure to do that,
You
gives
said
evidence to the contrary.
You said if they choose to. If they choose not to, then nobody else would know.
Well, just like anybody, you can refuse a chemical test.
Okay.
They can't force you to give a chemical test. When you're working for a police agency, if they request some kind of chemical test and you refuse, there could be a job action associated with that. So you do have a choice. Nobody can hold you down. But in this case, it appears that if the agency wanted to appear ethical and thorough in their investigation, you would think that'd be the first thing they do. The longer they wait, the easier it is for that test to come up negative.
Why do they always seem to come out with their evidence right after a crime when it seems like they're trying to protect and cover their butts, but yet when the public asks for something of evidence that went down, they'll say, well, we can't release that evidence. They pick and choose what they release to the public and how they show to perceive themselves is the way I see it.
On the legitimate side, there are certain things that are employee issues where releasing medical records or particular records are prohibited or has to be approved by the person being tested. On the other side of that issue would be that the image of the law enforcement agency takes precedence over the public's knowledge, the public's right to know.
Well, that's what they're a lot. They say we can't release because it's an ongoing investigation, but yet at the same time, if they need to make somebody look bad because of what they've done, they have no problem in releasing particular information about the subject.
And it appears exactly correct. The person that has the information can decide whether or not they want to give it to you.
All right, thank you.
All right, let's go to the next question. Yes? Would you like, Tony?
The Orange County District Attorney's Office is conducting an investigation into the criminal conduct of the police officers. Whether or not they've been drug tested, possibly is a question you should direct to the Orange County District Attorney. If they've been drug tested, if they haven't, why not? That's a question perhaps you should address to them. I will say this. Perhaps destruction of property and terrorizing medical marijuana patients is not as glamorous or as sexy as police officers eating edibles. But that's what happened that day. Destruction of property and terrorizing medical marijuana patients. The search warrant did not call for, and I've looked at it, the search warrant did not call for the destruction of property. And the videos that have been released so far, irrespective of whether you've seen all of it, clearly shows police officers breaking down a door, coming in with assault rifles, and destroying property. This is unequivocal evidence. It's indisputable. Nobody can argue with it. I don't think you need to see 16 hours of videotape in order to verify that these police officers came in and did what they did. It wasn't called for. And it wasn't called for by the search warrant, by the way. If you get a hold of a copy of the search warrant, you will see what they were supposed to be looking for. Now, violation of a municipal code is a misdemeanor. If anything, Sky High possibly would be operating in violation of a municipal code, which is a misdemeanor. Yet the search warrant claims that the officer went before a judicial officer and claimed that a felony was being committed by Sky High. We have not seen the affidavit underlying the search warrant, but I sure would like to know what felony they were committing, because they have articles of incorporation, they did have a seller's permit, and for all apparent purposes, they were operating according to the Medical Marijuana Program Act and the Attorney General guidelines. show if these officers went to a judicial officer and did not disclose to that judicial officer that this operation possibly was in compliance with state law, that they misrepresented and withheld valuable information from the judicial officer to sign that search warrant, which was a direct result of these officers coming in and breaking down a door. Also, knock and notice. Officers are required, unless they get a waiver, to knock on the door, announce their presence, and demand entry.
You could have opened the door.
This door was open. You can see from the video, there was no knock and notice. They broke down an open door. The focus on this investigation, I can understand why police officers eating edibles may be glamorous for the video. But the more important thing here is the destruction of property and the terrorization of citizens, which I believe is more serious for all of us and all of our safety than police officers eating medical marijuana edibles.
All right, are there any additional questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I've been in marijuana for 5 years.
What we do is we're introducing first in our meetings, 20 a day with parents. Also does the medicine. When we do that, we do marijuana. My really good friend named Chris. He was just arrested in Orange County for 4 baby pranks, and he was arrested with his family in the car in a church preschool parking lot. Unmarked officers and guns drawn on him and his kids. And on top of that, when they took him to jail, they treated him worse than the POW. They didn't have clothes that fit him, so he sat naked for a few days in solitary cell. He asked for a cup to drink water, they refused it. When he asked for soap to wash his hands, so he could drink water. On top of all that, besides using medical marijuana, he uses also prescription drugs. The jail refused to give him his prescription drugs. He ended up banging his head on the wall until he passed out so he could sleep. And this is what they have done to a two-tour war hero. This is just not okay, and that's what we for Warriors is here to stop. We're here to stand up and say enough is enough. We can't treat
All right, do you have any more questions? All right, thank you very much for coming. Thank you.